Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. A little bit of a different intro again for you as we continue this vision and values series.
It's a really important series that I think if you're new to our church or if you've been around for a long time, it's very valuable. It's core to our church, Kingsway Christian Church in Mount Vernon, Missouri. My name's Ryan, and I am pretty new here. So if you're new, you're not alone. I've been here about 4 months as we're taping this. I'm the worship and discipleship pastor, and I'm just excited to see how these vision and the values are like panning out in our church community.
Absolutely. And my name is Trevor. I'm the lead pastor and preaching pastor here, and I was a part of the team that put these together. And so as we're continuing this journey now through the values, I am stoked to see how they continue to show up, and now they are part of our kind of culture and who we are, and I'm excited to continue to pursue them and do that better. And I'll invite you in. If you've been a part of Kingsway for a long time, this is a really fun way for you to get to see that this stuff is working and that it's at work. Of course, things can always be better, but man, it's fun to see that some of this stuff is taking root. And if you're new to Kingsway, this is a beautiful way for you to get a chance to join in and to recognize what we're aiming for and the things that we're pursuing as a church. So I hope that this series will continue to be an encouragement to you and that you'll enjoy it. So thanks so much for tuning in, and enjoy. Hey, welcome back to the Kingsway Podcast.
Welcome.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a new special guest today. Hello, Father. This is my dad.
Yes.
I just told you were going to be on this.
Nice.
How much warning did you have? Was it 20 minutes?
It's just like raising you. There's never a warning.
Yes.
Oh my!
What did he do now?
I was eating my KFC. Ryan and I had one conversation last night while coming back from ice cream and fireworks, and he literally said, "We should have your dad on this podcast." And I said, "Great." Never crossed my mind in the 12 hours since to even think about telling you that you could be here.
Yeah.
I'm glad my opinion is so valued.
Joe
so
did a lot of
important.
prep for this. He cleaned Trevor's garage, and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing our Kingsway values, and these values have obviously a lot to do with Kingsway's identity, how we do ministry, how we make decisions in difficult times, or when things become a little bit less black and white and more gray. As we said before, these values are not everyone's aim; they're just Kingsway's aim. It's like a sniper rifle rather than a shotgun. We try to keep our focus with these values. So the reason why Ryan brought you up was because we were talking about investing in the next generation because their impact will be greater than our own. And he's like, hey, the previous generation of your family is here.
He's living in your house for the next week.
We should have him on the podcast.
I'm leaving today.
I was gonna say, he's leaving in like an hour.
Literally. It's like short investment. It's all we can handle.
So why this is such a healthy discussion, and I think why, and Ryan, you said this right before we started, it's multiple reasons. One, obviously, he's my dad. I think it's really fun to bring him on the podcast. Nothing else. We could just talk silly stories and stupid stuff, and how we've all probably traumatized my children, and he's traumatized me, and he's been traumatized by his dad, and we could just talk through stories if we wanted to. But we're not going to do that. But why he's on the podcast is because he's the previous generation, and he's a pastor of a church.
And he's been the pastor of a church for a long time.
In church for 40 years? How long have you been in ministry?
41 years.
41 years.
Oh, man, I feel old already.
You got to at least know a lot of mistakes.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
right?
made them all.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I know them all. Well, not all, but a lot of them.
People always say, like, how'd you get so smart? And I was like, well, you do a lot of dumb stuff. You get smarter quick.
Suffer a lot.
It's like, how'd you get so good at not running into the door frame? Well, after about 20 times, I figured it out.
Well, I used to say that all the time I was growing up. I used to say, you can learn from your mistakes or others. Others' mistakes is a lot less painful. And I was like, okay, good call.
Experience is the best teacher, but if you can learn from someone else, the tuition is a whole lot less.
See? There you
go. Yeah.
That was a family value. Also, one of the others was enjoy without owning. I think every time we went on someone else's boat, he was like,
enjoy without owning.
Enjoy without owning.
That's so
and
funny.
no balls in the house.
No balls. That is
That's
And
a big value.
Everything is a ball.
everything is a ball. That is, my brother is coming into town in a few hours. That will be brought up more times than anything else.
What is this? Is a ball? Look at it's round on that edge. It's a ball.
It's a ball.
What did you think it is?
Yeah.
Don't throw a ball in the house.
Well, as I've said, I think this discussion will be valuable for multiple reasons. One, Kingsway has always had, at least as long as I've been here, which has been 14 years, has always had a deep rooted ministry in children's and youth. It's always had just an identity of younger families, growing families, so much so that sometimes it feels more like a zoo than it does a church on Sunday mornings, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
But that has kind of crafted this value for us. It was almost forced upon us, where it's like, if we're going to take advantage of what God has given us, we need to invest in these young families and this next generation. The other side of it is our elders are all older. And so we recognize that life and death is a part of a cycle and that they won't be here forever. And so investing in the next generation is recognizing that the kingdom of God that is on this earth needs the next generation to kind of rise up and to take the reins. And so that being said, why you're here is to say, like, over the course of 41 years of ministry, when you think back of the deepest impact you had, does investing in the next generation seem to be a really good use of time and resources in the church? Does that seem to be an impact across all the churches that you've been involved in? Or does it seem to be something that certain churches have that identity more than others? Or does that seem to be something that most churches take advantage of when they have it? You think about it.
Is there a question in there? There's multiple
There are
questions
about 3
in
or
there.
4 questions.
If you want a simple question, is this: over the course of your 40 years, do you think this value holds weight? Do you think that's something worth focusing on?
Yes.
That churches that do that.
Yes.
If you say yes, how have you seen it? How have you seen that have impact? Think about personal. I think of Les Lardon. Is it Layden? That's in Springfield that you baptized at Riverlawn Christian Church.
Les Londine.
Yep, Les Londine, who's still a youth pastor right now and has been for over 30 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah, and he's still in ministry, and he taught. And I met him, and you baptized him, and I'm like, that's the next generation. I mean, it's incredible. So what? I mean, that's one story.
I mean, I can think of baptized a lot of people over the years, and your mom keeps in touch with all of them, through, used to be Christmas cards. Now it's internet, Facebook, that kind of thing. And so I keep seeing their names and faces, and I'm thinking, gosh, they're getting older. Gosh, wow, they're getting on that river.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, me too. So a lot of them obviously involved in the church, leading in the church. And I think way back to when we would sit down. I would sit down. I've been using a tool for 40 years, which is used to be called a peace treaty with God. It's all about relationships, and it's a 4-part sit down and present the gospel. Because just because you've been in church all your life doesn't mean that you even know it, and a lot of people don't. So I've spent a lot of time with that, and then when you spend much time at a church, you hang around with the whole congregation in different ways, and
For sure.
and there are people who want to grow and people who just want to do church, and you focus on the ones that want to grow. And a lot of questions, answers, classes.
All that.
It's probably more caught than taught.
Absolutely. And that's what that was going to be, as you're coming to, I would say, the later stages of your ministry, almost everything you're doing is probably pointing back to younger generations, not necessarily always super young. But even investing in 40-year-olds and then 30-year-olds and then 20-year-olds, it's a whole generation different than you. I think of what's his name from Willamette that you keep in contact with that calls you, and George Perdue. And he calls and texts you and so
Every 6 months or so.
and he's above you, right? He's pouring he's pouring back into you and
So
still
how's it
checking on.
going, Joe? He's one of the few.
He's one of the
Keep in
few,
touch.
Yeah.
but you have less and less of that, and you're more and more the role of looking back. I'm going to be 37 here in a few weeks, but just running into all the kids that I've invested in youth ministries, and then watching them have their own families and their own marriages and stuff, I can already feel that tension of like, you know, you marry somebody and then maybe you marry their kids, or you marry somebody and then all of a sudden their kids are getting married, and like generations are moving around you. Why do you think this value is something that if we're in a young church maybe is worth pursuing? And maybe Ryan, you can add to this too. Like, you're new to this conversation.
Yeah.
And you've only been here for 5 months. You know, my dad just learned about this, but like, do you feel like that's a healthy value?
Definitely. So a little bit about my story. I grew up in a Christian family, and I was going to church pretty much my whole life. But the thing that changed the course of my life was a not very much older generation pouring into me. It was my youth minister. And I think a lot of people who go to Bible college or want to pursue ministry in a different way, they can point to that person who pulled them into the faith more than that idea that they just found on their own, that whatever. A lot of times it's a person. And so for me, there's a guy named Matt Limbrick. And I remember I was in high school. I was in late high school, so like junior, senior year. And he was driving the van, like 15-passenger van full of youth kids going somewhere. And he was like talking about baptism or something. He's like, Ryan, who baptized you? And I was like, you did. And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. But it was that, like, he didn't even realize.
Worst nightmare, by the way.
Oh, I bet it is. And Matt, if you're listening, I want you to feel really bad about it. No, he was an amazing guy, and he'd poured into so many kids, but that was like right as I was getting into youth group. So I didn't really know him that well.
Yeah.
I just thought I wanted to be baptized, and then he did it because he's the minister.
Yeah, he's the minister.
Which I love that we don't have that trend in our church. So it's usually, we try really hard to have somebody who's been important in that person's faith journey. So if it's a kid, it's usually their parent or something like that,
absolutely.
who are going to be around. We have that kind of person baptize him. But I love that he baptized me, because the time he spent with me I was in the youth band, so rehearsals and Wednesday night services and Sunday morning services. All those were super important for me. All that time they spent with me, that baptism was before, but if it happened after, I know he would have known.
Yeah.
Because we had gotten closer.
And I know that obviously you started serving in the role as drummer.
Yeah.
And you were like the full-time drummer every week.
Yeah. Yeah, I probably worked more hours than the people at McDonald's next door just on that drum set.
And then it made this deep impact in also, I think, now in the role that you're in. When we hired you, you were like asking, like, how's your youth group? And like, what's your youth group like? And like, I want to be invested.
It not only got me into the church and in a real way, in a way where I wanted to be there if it was hailing outside. I wanted to be there no matter what. But also got me into what breaks my heart in the church, what I feel like God is calling me to in the church, which is worship leading, but it's also discipling students and training up students and just doing what that guy did for me for other people.
Reaching back.
Yeah. And so he may think about I don't know how long he's a youth minister, maybe 10 years, something. He may think about the 40, 50 students he had over those 10 years as his impact. But whoever I've impacted is credited to him, because he reached me first.
You've probably heard stories like this a number of times.
It's funny how the language has all changed about this, pouring into. It's like we
Yeah.
never talk about pouring into anybody. It's like, what are you pouring? What's leaking? What?
Come on, it's pouring. Is my cup overflowing?
Pouring into it. We're going to disciple.
I can just hear Billy Mays talking about Flex Seal. It's like, you got a leak in your boat?
The only reason I even know what to do is because when I was 16 years old, I had a guy by the name of Carl Heath, who would spend time with us. He was a layman in the church, and when things were tough at home and I didn't have anybody to talk to, I thought understood, he made it a point to let us know that anytime you can stop by day or night, and I took him up on that at times. I can remember being at his front porch at 11 o'clock at night, just upset about something, and we would sit down and I would tell my story, and he would pray with me, and that was a friendship that lasted I don't know how many decades until he passed away. Has it been 7 or 8 years ago? And I think of Leroy Lawson. When I started going to his church, he came as a new pastor, and I was very interested in what he had to say, and I would get my clipboard and I would have a sheet of paper, and I would write down questions, and I'd make an appointment because you could do that with him. I figured out, and I would come in, and I'd just start asking him questions, and he was just tickled to death that I didn't know why. I know now. It's people just don't do that. Well, I did. And at some point, I don't remember what point it was, maybe after 2 or 3 meetings, and he said, Joe, you have a good mind. We need people in ministry like you. And that was the last thing I wanted to do. And I said, well, I don't like what I see coming out of seminary. And he says, well, I went to seminary. And well, you're different. You're different.
I know what I said. I stand by it. No.
But he believed in me, and he encouraged me. And, so I think about people, Rex Durnovich, who was at the Methodist Church when I went there, and he was an elder at Central Christian. And just people along the way, how they talked to me, how they thought of me, how they treated me. And now I'm in a church, and our staff has been a young staff. I have a young staff now. We got a 24-year-old office manager, and we're looking to hire a children's director. And one of the gals that we're looking at, she's 23. We just had a 23, 24-year-old worship leader, and it's like we've got a lot of young people coming to church. When I look in the mirror, my hair is white. I don't know what happened. I just know
those doggone kids.
They will connect with them better than I will.
Absolutely.
And then sometimes it's just teach them, hey, don't put yourself down. Don't talk about I'm just a youth minister. I'm just the worshiper. I'm just to say, you know what? You're who you
are.
Right. Have I ever treated you that way or thought of you? No. So a lot of it is just helping them see they've got good ideas. They have,
and I've seen I've seen the relationships. I remember, multiple times when I was younger. You talking about, reaching out and having the relationships where you don't just take advantage of a situation for your own benefit, but that you're looking at how you can leverage it for others and leverage it for that. And I think it was because of your story, how you at your first, especially at that 16 age, didn't have any benefit to these relationships. There wasn't something that this guy's getting from you, but he wanted something for you that maybe you didn't even know you needed or wanted for yourself. We've talked about that a lot, where our relationship, kind of blossomed and grew when you started, I was probably 18 or 19. I remember telling you that I wanted to go into ministry. You remember this, and you didn't laugh in my face, but it was pretty close.
It's like, why do you want to do this? I was concerned. I thought, okay, what happened here? It's like somebody flipped a switch.
Well, and I wasn't living the life that I probably should have been, and you knew that to the degree, maybe not, but enough to go.
You were just kind of flaky, kind of keeping your options open.
Yeah.
Do you remember what I said to you? I'd like to know what you thought I said to you at that point, because I remember. I think
so. I don't remember everything, and my wife would tell you that the details of the story probably have changed 15 times. And Malcolm Gladwell's podcast,
which we referenced on the last episode of the podcast,
which we referenced
about memory,
we'll tell you that memory is a liar. But what I do remember, one of the standing comments was, "Your life does not reflect ministry. Your life is not a reflection of what a minister or what a ministry."
I said that to you. Wow, I was tough on
and
you.
And it was one of those like, have you even done ministry? Have you?
How do you even know you will?
Have you ever served? Right. And I was like,
and do you remember what I challenged you to do? Because I do.
Serve for a year.
It's like just do it for 6 months. Don't be going away every weekend. Accept some responsibility. Accept a role or responsibility of some kind, and just be there and be available. You'll never know if you will like it.
I don't know if you ever heard the story of the first time. So I went and told Boomer Rowland, I want to serve in children's ministry. This is what I want to do. I like kids. So he told me, show up Saturday night, and you're going to learn how to sing worship with the 3 and 4-year-olds. And I said, okay. So I show up, and the lady that was supposed to train me got sick. So she didn't meet me. So the guy that was there assumed that I was trained, ready to go, and I had done it. So I had 75 3 and 4-year-olds walk in, and they just threw me on stage and said,
how'd you do?
Good luck. And it was the Lord's Army. I've never sweat more in my life.
I remember watching you sweat.
Stressed as all get out, and it was like the reformed fire moment, right? Like this, like forged, like strength. And I remember leaving, going, I can do that. I can do this. And what's crazy is, I met my wife serving there. I met some of my best friends serving in those moments, in those years. And it ended up being a catalyst to moving all the way to Joplin to do ministry, and to go to school, which I never thought I would graduate. I think it was the only thing that got me through was I actually had a desire to graduate with a degree. And it really was that father-son relationship. But it was an investment, obviously, in your own.
Do you remember
son.
the onion story? How many times I tell you the onion story? Life is like an onion.
I haven't heard it.
Life is like an onion. It's like when you start peeling back all the layers, and after you're done peeling back all the layers, what do you have left?
Nothing.
You have nothing. The onion is made of layers, and life is made of layers of responsibilities and commitments that you make. And so don't be afraid to make a commitment. Don't be afraid
That's where
to
life is found.
take responsibility. That's where you'll find your life. And I remember when I pressed you about why do you want to do this, Trevor, you looked me straight in the eye and you said, Dad, I see what you and Mom have, and I want it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that about took me to my knees. I knew there was a God then because I thought, man,
Wasn't sure until that point.
God,
But that
really? Are you kidding? We made so many mistakes.
Yep.
But I thought, okay, well, something's coming through.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, and that's
for all three of you, really.
That's the second reason you're on this podcast is because I do feel like, coming and not getting into too much detail because I did love your mom and your dad, but coming from the household that you were in to the household that I was raised in to now that my kids are being raised in,
Yeah, I'm trying not to hurt them.
I know you're just cleaning out my garage.
Get over there. It's time to work. Because that was a big value around our house.
But, divorce is not on either side.
No.
Katrina's parents are still there. You guys are still in a loving relationship. They have two complete families that are around our kids. They have a loving church that they're a part of. Just incredible situation. And I see when the ideal, maybe not always, but when the ideal father-son family relationship and family unit is put in place around some kids, they prosper, they grow, they have
At least they have a better shot.
They have every opportunity, right?
And
There's
I would
no guarantee.
And I would tell you all the time, at some point you're going to realize your mom and I did not do all that we could do.
Yeah.
You're going to realize we made mistakes, we fell short, but just forgive us in advance when you figure out where those areas are. And just know that you're standing on our shoulders and you should be able to do better. You should be able to be a better minister, a better father, a better husband, and all that. And so that makes a huge difference.
That's why this value means so much to me. And I think, Ryan, think about this. Is this true that is the community that the church is supposed to be?
Yeah.
That we put kids that don't have fathers in places where they can have a father.
Oh,
we
yeah.
put kids in places where they don't have a good family.
The church became my
yes
extended family. I don't know what I would do.
So this
without
isn't
them.
just about money.
No.
This is about recognizing that these kids and these families need community, and they need a place that knows that we don't run away from dirty diapers and bad habits and tough kids and difficult situations and financially or socially, and that the next generation's worth investing in even if it's difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's, obviously, ideally, it's great. But I think when you recognize it's even worth investing in when it's not ideal, when it's not easy, when it's not perfect, because they're still going to have a deep impact. I think about where you came from to what your impact was to what my potential could be to what our kids could potentially be. Each tent has a greater opportunity to have deeper impact. Doesn't mean they will, but I think standing on those, it does.
What I see now over the years, and it's probably been in the last several years, maybe in the last 5 or 10 years, some more than any, is that the relationship begins to change over time as I get older and you're getting older. You're still fairly young, but the world's changing, and some of the stuff that I've told you, I'm just not equipped to deal with some of the things that are going on. But I find that I'm getting equipped because I'm being mentored by you. And I didn't really expect that. I didn't see myself as some great mentor. I just did what I can, always try to help people, try to help your kids. But then at some point, and this is something my dad never really, I don't think, understood. He felt like it was a flaw, a weakness. He would never let us see his weakness. We saw it anyway, and he would never admit to weaknesses. But if I can do that and say, hey, I need some help, it's amazing how, you and Tyler and Tracy all kind of help me. It's like, Dad, it's not like, Dad, get a clue. It's,
Yeah.
I ask, well, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? And it keeps me young and fresh and reading the kinds of things that I probably wouldn't normally read, and not getting, if I'm struggling with something, you guys seem to get a better handle on it quicker than I do. And, that kind of thing. I don't know what you even call that.
I think somewhat is you actually make friends. You
Right.
like grow into friends.
It's like growing your own friends.
It really is, and in some ways, it's a beautiful thing. I have a lot of friends and a lot of people in my life that don't have that, and obviously you didn't experience that with your dad to the level that you wanted. But I think that's ultimately the goal of the church, right? It's to grow community, grow friends, grow relationships, and that's. I mean, I've seen that. I just bumped into a girl named Maddie right outside Walmart. And I had her when she was 16 in a youth group. She just got married this last year, and we were just talking. And I just was looking at her the whole time going, like, you're like a person. Like, you're a real person.
Wouldn't you become a person?
Like, you're a real person. Like, you're not youth.
Full-blown adult.
Like, I'm like, you're a married woman. This is crazy. But it's funny, like, the way she talked to me and how we talked, I'm very close. I'm like, we have a lot more that we relate to right now because of the station of life that she's in than when she was 16. I think the church, as we invest in the next generation, that handing of the baton is much slower than we think. I think we think like it's just going to be this like moment where like the switch over, and I think that's the beauty of what we're feeling. Is I do feel like more than anything we're just holding on to the baton together, and we're kind of doing things together. And I think that discipleship method that you're even talking about, it's the start to get into the church. It's the start of the process, and investing in that next generation takes months, years, decades worth of conversations, and it takes multiple people most of the time in different situations. Like you listed 3 or 4 that took you from 16 to getting into ministry, and that's over 15 years worth of stuff. Having been here for just over a decade, basically 15, I've watched this happen. It's worth it every time to reach back.
What frustrates me, and I run into people, friends sometimes who complain, well, no one mentored me, no one poured into me,
Yeah, there we go. That's a good term for it.
That's a great term. We should
no
use
one
that
poured
one.
into my life, and no one discipled me, and it's like I just want to go, well, wait a minute, you didn't invite it, I'm just thinking back, and I've always done that, I guess. If I'm struggling, I'll pick up the phone. I'll go see, a Ken Idleman down in Evansville when I'm struggling with some church situations, and he'll pray with me. And I listen. I try to glean always. Reading books. Those are people that you haven't met, but you're reading. They're mentoring you through their writings, and so you can learn from just about anybody. But you have to decide that you have to invite it into your life.
I was going to say that's exactly right, because this next generation, if they won't take the impact, if they won't allow you into their life, it won't work, right? It doesn't work. It's not like you can just go and kidnap 15 kids, bring them to the church, and go, we're investing in you. They have to show up. They have to be a part of this, and then they have to be open to learning and growing. Every conversation that you talked about, whether it was Leroy Lawson or whether it was it Carl? What's the first guy, 16?
Carl Heath.
Carl, you went to his porch. You made the appointment to get into his office.
Rex Durnovich, I met him at church. He was an elder, but you learn from these people.
So it's not necessarily that you're going and forcing this down somebody's throat. You're ready for the opportunity when it's approached.
If you're teachable,
you
can learn. You can even learn from bad examples.
So when the 13-year-old slimy kid that doesn't wash his or wear deodorant or figure it out shows up to church, you're ready. You're ready to invest.
But that's the other part of it. So that you're ready. You're not like trying to force this on people, but you're also, by being ready, you're being there at the place where they're at when they're looking for answers, when they're looking for needs, like I don't have a father figure or like whatever. You're in a place where they can find you.
That's why I really like that word invest. Because invest looks for the opportunities and then pours into the place of greatest impact, right? You're like, we're poised and ready. When that kid goes up, you see what only you can see and they maybe can't see yet. You're like, I see your potential and I want to see it grow.
I've got a couple youth young men in their early 20s in Zimbabwe when I went over there a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I keep in touch with them, not daily, but weekly, every few days. One of them has left Zimbabwe and is now in Botswana looking to start a church using this evangelism tool that I've used for years. He caught it right away. He's using it, but his dad was a swindler. And his kid is smart, and he's street savvy, and he wants to make a difference for the Lord. And we've had lots of texting conversations, and it's amazing how you can even help from a distance. Sometimes I wonder, is he just using me?
Yeah, right.
Is he just using me?
Yeah.
And I check with those who really know him and going, no. And when they were looking to start some churches in Botswana, there was one kid they said that just impressed them, and that was the kid that I'd been in touch with. They didn't even know that. And so our church has ended up supporting this effort.
Yep.
And so it's amazing. It really is. And I'm just, it's kind of fun. You feel like, okay, I have something to live for, I have something to get me up.
Oh, dude, and that's the
In the
best.
morning.
That's the best part about this value, is especially, and I do believe that this next generation is not just about young kids. I really do think it's 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and even 60s. Sometimes if you get an 80-year-old mentor that's not bitter, broken, and completely like cynical, they are some of the best people to hang out with. They just have so much wisdom and to pour in. But to give you an idea how this plays out in our church and how this moves, we had a high school camp that just went to Colorado.
Yeah.
Incredible. You guys came back it was on wonder.
Gushing.
It was amazing. And everybody that went on that trip, you could just tell it had a deep impact. You guys had a meeting this morning for way too long about our kids camp that's coming up here in August, and how it's filling up, and you have multiple churches involved, and 60 to 80 kids that are going to be a part of this. It's just amazing, and it's something that you guys have been working on that since January. So
I haven't.
The
I
team
showed up
has.
in
I know.
March.
Yeah, you didn't get here until March, but I mean, time and resources and stuff, and it's all done in the intentionality to invest in that next generation and to get these kids some training and opportunities that a lot of the volunteers and the staff members have had themselves. So, hey, I hope this has been helpful for you guys. This is such a great discussion.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed getting a chance to define it. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please put those in there. Send an email to Ryan with any Q&A questions. We're still gathering those if you want to get those answered. Click the subscribe button if you want to continue this journey on our values. And make sure you hit the like button if you liked it and shared it. It would be awesome. Thanks so much for being on, Dad. I appreciate you.
I'm here. I may not smell the best because I'm outside working, but I'm here.
Hey, it's been awesome, and I knew it
been
would
great.
be. Hey, you guys have a great and glorious day in the Lord. We'll see you later.
See ya.
Bye.